I'll just start off with a acknowledgement of country and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm speaking today from the land of the Bunurong Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And Rita, where are you speaking from?
The land of the Jagera and Turrbal people in Mianjin.
Okay, I should say assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
It's wonderful to have you in conversation, talking all things Muslim votes matter. I think it's becoming an issue and a platform that's increasingly on people's agenda, more so than it was even 6 months ago, and for good reason. We have an election looming, and there's so many hot topics on the agenda for us to dissect, both nationally and, of course, internationally. But I wanted, if you could explain in your own words what MVM is, Muslim Votes Matter, and why it was created in the first place.
I think for us, it's like an act of insistence on the fact that we are human beings living in this country. We are equal to anyone else living in this country, and we shouldn't feel any sense of shame or guilt in taking that place. We are so dehumanized all the time by media and politics.
And when you say we, who are you referring to exactly?
The Muslim community. We are, as a community, we are dehumanized all the time. And I know that because I've worked as an advisor to the Australian Muslim Advocacy Network for the past 5 years. And my job has been to interact directly with the media and parliament and government. And I've seen how our community is dehumanized and put aside, our human rights just constantly put aside. So I think it's just, obviously what happened in Gaza was just a huge wake-up moment, and it is a moment for us to say, no, we don't accept this second-class place that has been set for us in the past 20 years and more in Australia. And it doesn't matter if, whatever your objectives are as a government, whether in foreign policy, defence policy, counterterrorism, all these areas of policy, it doesn't matter, what you think the national interest is, if you are treating us as if, our lives simply don't matter. And so I think to me, it's like an act of insistence about insisting that we are human and we deserve to be treated as humans. So at the core of it, it's activism, it's grassroots, it's love for each other, for our community, for our children. It's embracing our future. It's being unashamed about who we are, our faith, everything that is beautiful about our community, despite everything that is said about us by others.
That's a very comprehensive answer.
Yeah, I'll try to be briefer.
No, I think it's good because you answer it in such a multidimensional way, and I think that's important because it's not just a single thing. It's from what you've described, the origins of it or the impetus for it based on so many issues. And can you speak to, you talked about your advocacy role with the Australian Muslim Advocacy Network, and of course your knowledge about different governmental sectors and how they're responding to or co-opting the Muslim experience or misrepresenting that experience. Your background in terms of your credentials, what are you bringing to the conversation at MVM, and what weight did that have?
So you mean my professional background? So I'm an admitted solicitor, and I practice in the area of discrimination law and human rights, as well as setting up charities at the moment. So I bring a lot of experience to do with governance, but also to do with, standards of human rights and international law. With my previous history, I did work in government for 5 years as a political advisor and policy advisor in the Rudd and Gilly Gillard governments. So I worked in opposition for the leader of the Senate, and I also worked for a government minister in opposition and then in government for 3.5 years. So
it's fair to say your understanding of the mechanics,
yes,
of the, I guess, systemic operations of how government works and
yes,
how policies developed, etc., is something pretty much solidly across your purview. And would you say that helps you informs the work that you do for MVM?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it gives you, like, at a character level, it gives you a kind of resilience. You survive that kind of environment for 5 years. You can survive anything, but yeah, it's you're right. I mean, there's so many things that factor in to the dynamics of politics and government and media and all the lobby groups and the interests and the think tanks, and I'm familiar with all of them, and so it's made it much easier to just jump in.
Well, knowing how the think tanks operate and work and the lobby groups operate, I mean, what has been, in your experience, some of the misconceptions that people are holding about MVM as a group?
Yeah, so I saw that there was a bit of a misinformation campaign, deliberate one in the beginning from the media, suggesting that MVM was a political party, which is not true, and also suggesting that MVM was about pushing religion, I suppose, pushing Islam in the Australian community, which is also not true. It's an interest-based organisation that is about voter education and harnessing the power of our collective vote. So we are, sorry, I've forgotten the direction.
No, I was going to say, what are the misconceptions people have?
The misconceptions are that we are a political party and that we're pushing religion, that's it.
Then in response to that, the pundits who say, okay, you say you're not a Muslim party or an Islamic party, yet, you know, some might argue, well, MVM is urging Australian Muslims to vote strategically. How do you make the distinction then between that direction and who the party is?
Sorry, by getting the community to vote strategically, which are you suggesting that we're acting like a political party, or that we're?
Yeah, are people going to say that you're forcing them to vote for Muslim candidates? I mean, is that going to be the perception, or you're telling Muslims how to vote? Are you telling? Is that not bringing religion to it?
I think for starters, there are. It's not about Muslim candidates because there are so few Muslim candidates, and there are seats where there are up to 5 Muslim candidates running against each other. So, for example, how do we advise in that situation in Victoria? So, for us, it's about using a combination of research and community lived experience to work out, you know, where we can have the best impact, which seats, and then, you know, what would be the preferencing that we would recommend in that seat to send the strongest possible message. And it is about being realistic. You know, in some seats we can only aim to cause a swing. In some seats we can aim to unseat someone. And in some seats we can put someone into power. And that's part of the education process for our community, is just saying it is nuanced, and if we are looking also at the, you know, the choice between Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton, for example. A lot of people are so terrified of Peter Dutton that it's hard for them to think about the fact that, well, in other seats, it's not Peter Dutton who's running, and, you know, we're then faced with the question of, are we going to be preferencing Labor or LNP over each other, and what's the, you know, what's the aim, what's the message and the strategy that we're aiming for? And so when we make decisions like that, we need to be taking into account local data, the quality of the candidates, and then also the impact on the national data. And then also, as I said, community lived experience, like, because there are strong community fears, anxieties, and tolerance levels, I suppose, for different types of strategies, you know, in terms of risk. So I think it's a difficult job, but I think one of the beauties of Islam being, you know, infused in our movement, because we are Muslims, is that we are able to work through a lot of hardship together and have that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood where we survive through all those difficult conversations and challenges, you know. That's been my experience so far in Queensland.
Oh, you're in Queensland. Okay. Well, I mean, this whole notion of the Muslim community voting as a bloc is new. I mean, I believe it's been piloted or tried out in the US, Canada, and the UK. But what do you think our not voting as a bloc has impacted our being taken seriously by the political establishment?
Yeah. So when I worked in politics in the Labor government under Rudd and Gillard, I saw the way that people spoke about the Aboriginal community as a voting community, because there was a view that they always vote Labor and they don't change their vote, and they have no other choice but to vote Labor because the other options were more racist towards them. And therefore there was this sense of, don't worry about them, you know, in terms of policy, don't worry about pleasing them or, you know, being fair towards them. They, you know, they don't offer any consequence as a community. And I would often see, for example, Labor MPs that were in very high Aboriginal seats, high Aboriginal population seats, where that Labor MP was very well liked, who was a very nice person who, you know, socially, you know, spread him or herself through all their community activities. But, you know, you could see at the end of the day that they would be there for decades and achieve nothing. And in terms of their advocacy in the party, it was weak. And even their leverage outside the, you know, the party, outside the party room was weak. And I could see the role of those nice MPs was just to keep people continuing to vote for them and to keep that status quo. So I've applied that learning directly in this situation, because I can almost guarantee that similar conversations have been held within the Labor Party in the past 15 months, you know, a question mark about, well, you know, how educated is the Muslim community? How organised are they? Can they really hold us to account? What will really be the fallout? Will they, you know, they can't vote for the alternative. The alternative is too racist, too dangerous for them. But one of the points I've been trying to pass on to my fellow brothers and sisters is that the two-party system, the two parties actually work together as a unit in a very dangerous way for our community. There's been a lot of very risky legislation that's been passed in this last term of Labor government when it comes to counter-terrorism, the hate crime bill that was passed last week, and also the immigration bill that they passed that allows a minister to ban travel from an entire country to Australia, you know, where it's deemed in the national interest. Labor has actually passed some extraordinary legislation that, you know, is really at odds with their party platform. And I think we are beyond the point now of just saying, well, we have to vote for them. It's we are seeing that our system is different. We have other choices, and if we continue doing what we're doing, we are going to end up with worse laws.
Sorry to cut you off. I just wonder, how are you then going to vet? How are you going to vet future candidates for endorsement? What will that look like? And is there a threshold for alignment with our community concerns?
So there is an endorsement process for candidates that are interested in being endorsed by MVM. There is a questionnaire that's going out to every candidate and every electorate that covers a range of policy issues. It's not just Gaza, it's a range of issues that MVM identified as being important issues to the community from the different surveys that we've been running over the past year. So that survey will acquire some research, which we then, you know, we will also complement with research into the track record of those candidates, their party policy statements, etc., and combine that together to create our how to vote cards, which will apply in every electorate, including in the Senate. And that will most likely be online, a digital how to vote card that people can access just by entering in their a part of their address. It will come up with their ballots, with their recommendations. That's the how to vote. But if a candidate wants to go beyond just doing well on our how to vote card and actually wants to be endorsed by MBM, there's a further process which involves an interview with someone in MBM, and we ask them a lot of difficult questions about what they would do if they were put at odds between what their community wants and what their party position is. And
can I just stop you there for a second, because you mentioned, and you started off by saying, yes, Gaza may have, what's happening in Gaza and Palestine has been the impetus in many ways for the development of what MVM is, but it's not a one-issue party now. I mean, there is more than one issue. Can you explain some of the breadth of what those issues are, so that people can get a better understanding and say, well, this is all on the table when it comes to candidates' positions and how they align their values. So what else is there?
So what else there is? So just on Gaza, one of the key issues we're asking about is whether they will support the Red Lines package that's in Parliament, which is some bills that have been introduced by Fatima Payman and Lydia Thorpe to stop Australia from funding or arming any atrocities into the future, as well as unlawful occupation. So that's a very practical step that a lot of people want to see. So we're asking explicitly, will they support that package? Mm-hmm. Beyond Gaza, one of the top issues is Islamophobia and the impact, for example, of terrorism laws and policing on our community, and the stigmatisation of our community by politics and media. Some of the other issues include religious freedom. So, for example, the rights of our religious schools to be able to make decisions about their staff and require their staff to meet the ethos of the school. There are
cost of living, housing issues, or
housing, yes, housing, family violence. I think Medicare, cost of living. Just trying to think of what the other issues are on the top of my head.
Climate,
Yeah, I'm not sure actually whether climate made the list, but it was based on the surveys that came back from the Muslim community. So there are a few that relate to Islamophobia. Let's face it, it's like a top community concern. But there were others that are very common to the rest of the Australian community.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just trying to get an idea of the suite of expertise or the suite of topics that an endorsed candidate would need to have a position on potentially, and you've outlined what some of those are. What if a major party candidate of the two major parties strongly supported your key priorities? Would you endorse them?
So I think it would come down to the question about what they would do if it was at odds with their party position, or if their party required them to toe the line, what they would do. And, it's hard to imagine a Labor candidate saying at this point in an election that they would cross the floor. It's just so hard to imagine. But on a objective basis, if they were to say, yes, I would go against my party position and vote in support of human rights, I think that there would be no reason why MBM would
not endorse.
Yeah, not endorse.
That said, in the likelihood that you did endorse and a candidate did get up, but then they failed to, meet their endorsement obligations or endorsement agreements, what would the reaction or what would be the response from MVM?
So that's another part of the conversation is saying, look, this support is very much conditional on your track record and performance. So we are not in the business of making recommendations to sell the Muslim vote. We're making recommendations for people to, in a way, rent out their vote for a term, see how someone performs, and if they don't perform or they betray the promises that they make, that there be consequences at the next election.
Okay, now I want to shift. It's good that there are consequences. I want to shift now more to voter behaviour and voter apathy. No, I wouldn't say apathy. I mean, voting is compulsory in Australia. We know that. But voting patterns haven't always been consistent. I mean, you mentioned with your previous government experience in relation to First Nations people, there was an assumption that historically they voted this way, they always will, so we can take them for granted. Now, with the Muslim community, it is pretty diverse. We know that. The idea of even having a bloc could be revolutionary. We do know that depending often on people's socioeconomic standing, there could be variances in the way that they've historically voted. We do know, though, also that post-October 6th, there has been a change in a lot of people's previous inclinations about a government standing, for example. How do you anticipate you're going to impact voter turnout in a way that is consistent and voting in a bloc mentality?
I think that, it's a gradual process. So a lot of these goals we won't achieve necessarily in the next term or the next election. It'll be, it's like 2 or 3 elections it'll take us to develop that kind of collective behaviour or attitude to voting. We are really in the business of providing informed advice. We don't subscribe to the idea that the community needs to be told people need to be told how to vote. There has been people in our community in the past who've always told people this is how you should vote. And there are people even in our community who always say, just tell me how to vote. I don't want to pay attention. Just tell me, And the challenge that MVM puts up is, please don't just ask us to tell you how to vote. Okay. Pay attention, because we are going to, it's going to change every election. There may be an incumbent that you're trying to hold to account this time around, but next time around it might be different. And we need you to understand how the system works to a degree and to care about it, because sometimes we'll be making strategic suggestions which seem odd to you or don't align with what you're used to. And, for example, there are a lot of people who are more attached to Labor in our community. But I think they overlook sometimes the people who are LNP voters in our community and who are who have decided to maybe shift this coming election because of Gaza, to send a message. But moving forward, just because Peter Dutton is extremely controversial and hurtful to a lot of people in our community, it's not a reason to sort of take a block mentality towards the LNP into the future. We actually need to show that we are evidence-based, we are strategic, objective, and focused on outcomes. So if the LNP can one day appoint a leader who has a more egalitarian approach, it could very well be a party that is putting up candidates that MVM is going to put number one. And I think it's very important that we communicate that to our community, because otherwise there will be a sense that, oh no, we're always just, suggesting the same.
Yeah. Typecast. In terms of our community itself, I mean, there are cohorts that maybe historically have not been at the front of any kind of movement, whether it's women, our young people, even elderly or the newly arrived. What kind of measures is MVM taking to ensure that their voices are co-opted in your movement?
So language, translating a lot of materials into different languages was a starting point, but the way that we are grassroots, so we are only as strong as the many people that join the movement and become volunteers. So the goal is to reach into, to ensure that our movement is representative of the ethnic and cultural diversity. It already, to me, has the gender balance, because there are so many sisters involved in MVM. Mm-hmm. There is also a good breadth of age groups. So we have a lot of young people, a lot of people around, middle age, my age, you know, and then and also the older volunteers. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't. My children call me middle age, so I have to use that term now. But you know, for example, one of the co-chairs up here in Queensland, he's 80 years old, right? Okay. Yeah, mashallah. He's like, whenever anyone asks him to do an introduction, he's like, well, over the past 60 years, I have, you know. But yeah, look, we have, I think, room to grow on the language diversity. It's so important because when it comes to election day and we have volunteers there at the booths, showing the MBM how to vote cards and answering any questions about voting, it's so important to have people speaking the same language as people who are voting. So that is really one of our goals, is to broaden out that way. At the moment, we have pretty good diversity, but like, for example, it's not like, you know, how some things it's very concentrated in one ethnic group. It's just like, it's all, you know, but this is still, it's quite blended. So we have Arabs, we have, you know, Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis and South African Indians and I'm just trying to think of the mix. You know, we probably need to reach out a little bit more into certain communities. Like, for example, I've been noticing that we don't have many Turkish people involved in Queensland, but it's still pretty good. Yeah, for a Muslim organisation, it's still pretty good. And the fact that we have women.
What are the numbers looking at in terms, when you talk about you having a lot of, nationally speaking, I mean, what's your swell of like that?
I don't know how many there are nationally, but I know that we've had about 300 people express interest in Brisbane. And there are, you know, we have, I've worked in so many different Muslim organisations where it is very male dominated, or it's very one culture, and this is very different. You know, I'm also in a leadership role. There are women who are leading, professional women, women who are homeschooling their kids, who are, you know, taking up leadership roles. There are, it's what is it about organic movement?
What is it about the call or the draw of MBM that is bringing about this new model of a Muslim-led movement and platform? Not an Islamic organisation per se, because it's not that, and it's not an Islamic party, but it's certainly Muslim dominant. I'm assuming there's non-Muslims in the who are volunteers as well. Yeah. What is it that makes this as an entity so attractive? That's different to, you know, a lot of our other institutions, which historically have been very male dominated. How has this become so different?
I think it's because from the beginning it's been about not waiting for anyone else to lead, not waiting, you know, not having this sense of gatekeepers or anyone who we have to wait on or rely on to lead. It's just everyone doing the bit that they can. I was going to say something else. We have, I think it's also that there's a message about collaboration, which I really like. So one of the things that really drew me in was when I had my first chat with some of the MVM leaders in other states, was we believe in unity of purpose, which means that we don't all have to be, you know, if someone's working in a different organization, we don't have to say, oh, you have to come and work for MVM. It's just, if you're working on the same cause, then you have a unity of purpose. You're collaborating, and collaboration.
And just to be clear, when you say working for, no one's being paid in these capacities. This is all voluntary.
Yeah, we're all volunteers.
I think that's a really important point to make, that there's no money under the table for this. This is people doing this for the love of the greater, you know, the bigger picture, I should say.
Yes, yeah. And it's very, like any money we have been able to raise has been local money. There is no, you know, sometimes we see in US politics and organisations being funded by other countries and things like that. This is intentionally nothing like that, because that's one of the other important things, for example, is that we are bridging the Shia and Sunni communities as well. So geopolitically, there is no point in us, trying to stake some kind of position.
Yeah.
We are for the Ummah and for our safety and well-being and doing good. So we are able to bridge that, and that's been a wonderful part of the journey for me, is visiting a lot of the Shia masjids and understanding how political the Shia community is compared to what I'm used to in a lot of the Sunni masjids. It's a lot more, people are a lot more prepared to talk about getting involved in politics.
Yeah. So it's bridging a lot of divides, but more than anything else, it's showing a united front on issues when it comes to voting as a bloc for a community, as an entity, which we've not seen on one particular issue, I think, historically, at least at the risk of sounding like an old uncle. In my nearly 50 years in this country, that's pretty much aligns with what I am seeing as well. Rita, can I just jump now to I guess more key federal issues? So MVM, I read, and not just MVM, but I'm hearing this from other pundits as well, there is a push towards a hung parliament as an outcome at the next election. Now, can you explain what does that mean for those who do not know? Because it sounds, only the first time I heard it, I just had all these graphic images in my head. What are we bringing back corporal punishment or something? Or do we see this, how do we see this strategy playing out, and what's the goal?
So a hung parliament is where neither side wins. So you have like an equal outcome. And
is that probable with a preferential voting system?
It's happened at least. It's happened in like, for example, when I was working in the Julia Gillard government, there was a hung parliament, and she had to negotiate with the Independents and the Greens to form government. So when they form a government that way, it's called minority government, which basically means they can't hold a majority, but they're still managing to govern with the support and the deals that they've made with the Independents and Greens. And that's a really great kind of model for democracy, because it forces those major parties that, tend to have very limited perspectives to consider a whole bunch of issues that independents are championing. So it's
right. Okay. So that, and that again, for the benefit of those who don't understand what that means, this is another possible outcome. It could be one of the two major parties, or it could be a hung parliament.
That's right.
Are there any other iterations that it could eventuate between those three?
No. Well, so for example, if they can't form minority government, then the whole thing dissolves and they have another election.
Oh, has that ever happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll play that one out. And now I wanted to ask, some critics are arguing that MVM is too focused on foreign policy and neglecting domestic issues. How do you respond to that?
I think that's probably a view that someone would have if they're not working within MVM, because we are very much about voter empowerment, which is our community here. And obviously Gaza has just been such a great impetus to our community, and what opened our eyes to this, for the fact that we've been thinking that, the lesser of two evils, that this is, just an okay system, we can just tolerate it kind of thing. But it's not when you see tens of thousands of people being massacred and that lack of accountability from our government. So that has been such an impetus. Of course, we will use that impetus to say to people, convert that despair that you're feeling, that anger and that frustration, convert it into something practical and beautiful and positive and long term, that where we are, building something. But
Okay, cool. Thank you. How do you counter concerns that people might have that as being a voting bloc, this might subject MVM to becoming a political target?
By other political parties, or?
Yeah, well, But by certain political parties, sure, and by the media, definitely.
Yes.
So, I mean, if we're going to become seen as an entity that's, ascribed all those negative connotations that any, self-respecting Muslim platform gets labelled with, how do you respond to those criticisms?
Well, it's bound to happen, and it's not really a reason to stop. So
keep going.
Yeah.
What about internal backlash from those within the community saying, "Oh, you're being divisive, you're trying to create a new entity, or let people decide that they can make their own mind up, etc." You're being too the naysayers. Well, we have them. Every community does, and I'm sure they have. Maybe I'm not sure if they've raised their voice and their concerns. What do you say to them?
I say to them that we haven't had any movement or organisation that's focused on political education and voter education. And that is, we've had some that have, for example, produced scorecards and run the odd forum there, but here and there. But this is about a nationwide change in mindset and just a platform for people to come together and organise. And that hasn't existed before because, our representative bodies are often receiving government contracts, often providing services as well. We've had a few independent advocacy bodies like Aman that I've advised. But all of, even Aman, for example, that's an entity that has engaged in running parliamentary submissions and doing policy analysis and working out what are the laws we need to change for true effect, for our community, for good effect. But we've never had the leverage to implement anything. Yeah. So this is the whole point of this, is to create that leverage, that missing leverage. And I have heard some criticism from people within our community saying, oh, you're going to make us more of a target of Islamophobia.
Has that happened? That was my next question. I know there's been very concerted efforts to keep people's individual names outside of the movement because precisely because of that. But has it been occurring, and how have you managed it?
Do you mean like people being targeted for being in MBM, or what do you mean?
Just being Muslims and being in the political space, being told to
so
from, etc., etc.
There hasn't been much in the way of, like, it's pretty safe to be involved in Muslim votes matter. There's no, we're obviously just participating in democracy, so there's nothing wrong with that. But there was some examples of people in leadership positions being doxxed and things like that in the beginning. That hasn't happened since. But the criticism that I've heard is that, by sticking our necks out and being visible and doing it, being, Muslim and political at the same time, we are going to make Islamophobia worse. And therefore, people in our community who are the most vulnerable because they're in insecure work or whatever are going to suffer discrimination more. And this is a line of argument to me which is basically giving up, is so defeatist in terms of just accepting that the very high discrimination and anti-Muslim sentiment that we currently endure must just continue, and there is nothing that we should, we shouldn't organise to try and change it. And I think that's very, I think it's actually uplifting for our children to see, yes, you can be political, engaged, and Muslim, and that's actually a beautiful combination.
Oh, well said. That's great. Now, currently, the federal election is in your sights, but beyond federal politics, does MBM have ambition to state and local government to make waves into those frontiers, and if so, how?
At the moment, MBM, I understand, is really focused on the federal sphere. So I'm not aware of any plans yet for the state and local, but that flows naturally, that would be the next frontiers.
Okay,
I know that some of us in our state chapters have already been involved in state and local government elections, not always in a very organised way, because we actually treated some of those elections as little test runs, you know, like we're practicing some of the systems that we'll need to have in place and things like that.
teething stages.
Yeah.
Well, it's still early. I mean, how long has it been running now since its inception?
So I think MVM as a whole has been around for more than a year, but for example, in Queensland, we've only been active since mid last year. So every state is different. I know Perth, for example, has been the longest running. They were the pioneers. And it's been great to actually work across states, because there are inevitable cycles that happen with volunteer movements and lessons learned, and it's been great to share those and take strength from each other.
I've only got a few more questions. How can people get involved with MVM? What's the most effective way to do it? And are there any barriers to being involved in terms of accessibility? I mean, can they work remotely, or do they need to do this in person?
Yeah, no, there's no barriers in that way. So people can work remotely or in person. There are a range of different jobs, practical jobs from small to big, that need to be done. So anything from, you know, managing a spreadsheet to helping do a PowerPoint to attending a stall outside a masjid or at a community event, handing out flyers. On election day and pre-poll, for example, we'll be looking for volunteers to be attending at the booths to support voters on the day. So there's a range of different roles, and the best way to apply is through the MVM website, where there's a form that you can fill out, and it will be sent directly to your state group, so then they can get in touch with you.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll have all those details provided on the link above or below this little session that goes out. Two last questions. The first is, what do you say to young people who, and this is a real auntie question here, but what do you say to young people, voters, let's just say voters, who are still undecided about whether their vote even is going to make a difference?
Well, there are some seats that are lost by as little as 50 votes. So won and lost on that many votes. I mean, even if you look at Peter Dutton, his electorate, so tight. There's about, you know, it's yes, such a tight race. So yeah, every vote does literally count. And especially when it's not just voting, but talking to others, educating others, being involved as a volunteer. There are so many ways that you can amplify your impact beyond voting. But yeah, your vote will count.
Excellent. And the final question is, what message would you have for members of parliament, or politicians rather, even aspiring politicians who are ignoring the Muslim vote, feeling that it's inconsequential?
Well, I suppose the evidence will be in the pudding, or whatever the saying is.
It's such a lawyer.
It will be in the pudding. Sorry, that was a very lawyerish way of me trying to use that expression. But yeah,
yeah, okay.
The proof will be in the pudding.
Okay, so that'll be its own, I guess. Yeah, I guess it'll tell itself, really, won't it? I guess at their own peril.
It is at their own peril. Yeah, I think if they are going to, I mean, we have already seen so many disappointing responses in the last 16 months, but
do tell,
well, okay, I think that when I say we, I mean on behalf of the Muslim community, not so much MVM, that, you know, people that we've voted for, I'm speaking personal experience, people we voted for who've just turned around and been so disappointing, and just not had that accountability in terms of just honestly explaining where they're at in their position, why they've taken that position. So I think we're really looking forward to a different kind of dynamic into the future that is a lot more respectful and equal.
Well, I think this is a game changer. I think it's never existed before. You have, like you say, a really diverse spread of who our community is, who are a part of this movement across the country. It's not just state specific; it's everywhere. So, thank you for your time, Rita, and for sharing both your professional analysis as well as just how the system works and how the MVM machine also works. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and yeah, inshallah, I look forward to seeing where all your efforts take us at the next election, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Tasneem.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Authorized by an Al Ziyadat, Muslim Votes Matter, Belconnen.